Here is your asterisk complete 10-hour word cinematic script, fully merged, polished, and asterisk, without any section headings, perfectly voiceover ready, flowing as one continuous documentary-style narrative. Something extraordinary has happened in the Arctic, something Russia never prepared the world to see. One of Moscow's most critical economic lifelines has abruptly frozen, literally and politically. The Northern Sea Route, a corridor Russia has marketed as the future of global trade, a dollard, trillion link connecting Asia to Europe, is suddenly non-operational, not because of climate, not because of sanctions alone, but because Russia's own icebreaker fleet, the pride of the Kremlin, has been trapped, delayed, or left unfinished in shipyards that can no longer function. For Russia, this is not a setback. This is the collapse of an economic dream it spent decades building. It began with a simple announcement. 2 of Russia's flagship nuclear icebreakers, vessels engineered to carve through the thickest Arctic ice, were immobilized. Not destroyed, not damaged, just stuck. But within hours, analysts realized the truth. This wasn't about 2 ships. This was the beginning of a chain reaction, because Russia's entire Arctic project depends on a single fragile system, a fleet capable of guiding commercial ships through some of the most dangerous frozen waters on Earth. And now that fleet is paralyzed. Shipbuilding companies halted their routes. Energy firms froze operations. Insurance markets refused to cover northern voyages. And for the first time in modern history, the Arctic route Russia promoted so aggressively simply closed. For years, the Kremlin insisted that Arctic shipping would replace the Suez and become the world's next major trade artery. A shorter path, a cheaper solution, a new Silk Road built on ice. But the entire system depended on one assumption: Russia would always have reliable, fully operational icebreakers. That assumption has collapsed. Russia's shipyards, especially the ones building next-generation nuclear vessels, are in crisis. Western sanctions have cut off the specialized technology required for nuclear propulsion systems, reinforced hull materials, navigation modules, and even basic components for maintenance. The timing is catastrophic. 4 of Russia's newest icebreakers, the ones meant to expand and modernize the Northern Fleet, sit unfinished. Some aren't even half complete. Others are little more than skeletal frames frozen in place, waiting for foreign parts that will never arrive. The message is painfully clear. Russia's Arctic industrial engine has stalled, and the entire Northern Fleet is now suffering the consequences. Dean, the world didn't understand the magnitude of the collapse right away, but when shipping companies began rerouting vessels thousands of miles south, markets reacted instantly. Energy traders started recalculating forecasts. European analysts and across Asia, in Japan, South Korea, and China, governments that had invested heavily in Russia's Arctic promise began calling urgent strategy meetings. One Chinese maritime report captured the shift perfectly. The Arctic route is no longer reliable. All forecasts must be recalculated. Just like that, everything changed. Countries that saw Russia as a northern gateway now see an unreliable partner with collapsing infrastructure. The world is witnessing Russia lose the one geopolitical advantage it believed was untouchable. American analysts, including Rachel Maddow, quickly broke down the significance of the collapse. Her assessment was simple but devastating. This was Russia's economic future, and now that future is frozen in place. Because the Northern Sea Route wasn't just a shipping lane. It was the Kremlin's long-term strategy to compete with Western economies. A shortcut bypassing Western-controlled waters. A shipping lane free from US and NATO influence. A crucial export path for Arctic oil and gas. And a territorial claim that expanded Russia's reach on the global stage. Without the route, Russia loses leverage. It loses revenue. It loses a strategic narrative it has pushed for years. Most importantly, it loses the illusion that it is the world's rising Arctic power. But the consequences are not only economic, they are military. Russia's Arctic bases, radar installations, submarine ports, and missile sites rely on northern supply convoys. When the fleet can't move, logistics stall. Recent satellite images show unusual patterns, fewer shipments to remote Arctic bases, delayed supply operations, even emergency airlifts where ships should have been delivering essentials. For a military superpower, interruptions like this expose critical vulnerabilities. And NATO is watching every detail. Inside Russia, panic is quietly spreading. Shipyard workers face layoffs. Energy companies warn of massive profit losses. Regional officials are demanding explanations the Kremlin can't provide. One Russian economic advisor, speaking anonymously, admitted, "If the northern route stops, our Arctic economy collapses completely." The Kremlin knows it. That's why Russian propaganda has abruptly shifted. No more triumphant claims about Arctic dominance, only cautious statements meant to hide the severity of the crisis. Russia dream of turning the Arctic into a new global trade empire. Instead, it has become a geopolitical graveyard. Meanwhile, Europe sees opportunity. For years, European shipping companies claimed Russia's Arctic route was unstable and risky. They warned that relying on Moscow for Arctic navigation was a mistake. Now, they have proof. The Northern Sea route is no longer a competitor to the Suez Canal, the Mediterranean corridor, the Baltic network, or Scandinavian shipping lanes. Europe's trade routes remain secure. Russia's alternative has collapsed. This is a quiet but significant strategic victory for the European Union and a massive strategic loss for Moscow. And the problems don't end there. Russia's Arctic oil and gas projects, worth hundreds of billions, now face an uncertain future. Tankers need icebreakers. Drilling equipment needs supply ships. LNG terminals require constant maintenance convoys. Without the fleet, production slows, revenue drops, and Russia's wartime economy tightens further. This is a crisis Russia cannot hide. Data does not bend. Numbers don't lie. The Arctic, once sold as Russia's ticket to global dominance, is now becoming a financial black hole. Blando, which brings us to the most important question. What happens next? Bland, will Russia attempt to rebuild its icebreaker fleet without Western parts? Can China realistically rescue the Arctic project? Will Moscow try to militarize the route to compensate for economic losses? Or is this the moment the world watches Russia's Arctic ambitions ancients? Or is this the moment the world watch Russia's Arctic ambitions collapse permanently? Right now, the Northern Sea Route, the project Russia proudly labeled the future of global trade, is silent, frozen, disabled, gone. A stirwar trillion-dollar dream has become a stirwar trillion-dollar warning. The world's most ambitious Arctic expansion has met the one enemy Russia cannot defeat: reality. As nations adjust their strategies, one truth becomes undeniable. The Arctic is no longer Russia's advantage. It is Russia's greatest vulnerability. And as the Arctic winds rise and the northern seas grow silent, Russia faces a future it never planned for. The world is watching, allies are recalculating, and Moscow is scrambling to explain a collapse it never believed was possible. The question now isn't whether the northern route will reopen. The question is what Russia will be forced to do next to survive without it. Land. Because when a stirwar trillion-dollar dream falls apart, the consequences never stay frozen for long. This story isn't finished. Not even close. Stay with us, because the next chapter is already on the horizon.